Good morning.
Good morning.
In 2022, you realized Prompt,
Yes.
a comic book made entirely with AI.
Yes.
The first question is why?
Why?
I'm mortally curious.
It was to do a few things. It was to understand what was going on. I had become aware of artificial intelligence and machine learning created imagery. And I was confused by what I was seeing, so I wanted to just see what was happening. I've never had a problem with technology. I was a very early user of Photoshop, and I use technology in the films and music that I make, and I love using those tools. So if this was a new tool, I wanted to know what it was. So I decided to set it some tests and set up some little routines for it to do, to test it, to see what it did well and what it did less well, and ultimately work out how it fitted into my world and how I might fit into a world with it in it. At the end of the day, I have a problem with people calling it a tool.
Okay.
It is a tool, much like the internet is a notice board, but it's also clearly far more than that. And AI is far more than just being a tool. It's a huge shift in the way we think about the nature of creativity and art. And so I think if you're going to mess around with those forces, you really need to be careful, because I think you're talking about the fundamental nature of us and how we deal with each other and pass on culture. And art, for me, is essentially empathy. How humans see through each other's eyes and experiences. And if you're going to change that, well, okay, we can, but be aware of quite what you're changing. This is not just a little fun tool on the side. The little fun tool is the Trojan horse that puts through a major change in our fundamental definitions of creativity and art. There are other issues as well. AI can only function if it scrapes the work of living artists without asking their permission or paying them, which I have a problem with, clearly. It uses a grotesque amount of power and energy at a time when we should be sensitive to that. And at the end of the day, I've ended up, my feelings have hardened rather, and I think that artificial intelligence will have an extraordinary role to play with its predictive nature in the worlds of science and virology and town planning, all sorts of things, but has absolutely no business in our imaginative lives. And so I'm fiercely against it.
Okay. So let's shift to Raptor.
Okay.
Comic Con
A happier subject.
Comic Con Edizioni published this work, and I want to ask a simple question: how this comic book, which is traditional, let's say, how relates to other works of yours, like Cages or Black Dog?
Well, all three of those books, I think, represent me. They represent my values and my views of the world. They value art and creativity and the individual's imagination. They all are worlds that I've enjoyed exploring. Black Dog was set in First World War and the years around it, and it was, extraordinary to spend 6 months diving into that world and trying to understand one person's experience going through that what was a life-changing event. For Raptor, that's come from a couple of different places. I love the natural world. I walk every day. I very much love this strain of new nature writing that's around at the moment, work by Robert Macfarlane and various others. I wanted to try and explore that. I fell in love with this story about a Welsh horror writer called Arthur Machen, whose wife died when he was young, and he, in his grief, felt he could try and meet her again in beyond the veil, the world beyond the veil. Now, I don't believe in that, and he eventually didn't believe in that. But that confusion and grief to drive you to try to do that, I thought was very, very moving. I really loved that story. And then I think something quite different I've been making notes about. I think, like a lot of us, I feel very confused and powerless in the world, political changes and the general bonkers stuff that's going on. I sit at home, I draw my pictures and try and write stories. That's all I can do. I would make a terrible politician. But I do have a voice there. And so I wanted to try and say something about that, how I was feeling. And it was hard to be politically specific. You know, the politics of different countries is very different. But the one common denominator throughout all of those things seemed to me to be that money corrupts everything.
I agree.
And money corrupts politics, absolutely. And so I wanted to say that.
We have time for a final question.
Okay.
So you used a lot of techniques in all of your works.
Yep.
A lot.
Yeah.
But there's some other technique that you never used and you want to experiment next or in next works?
In terms of drawing and painting and creating comics, I've tried a lot now. I enjoy experimenting with new things and trying to find ways of folding different technology and different styles and textures and marks into what I do. I think the one I'd really love to explore is interactive media.
Okay.
And there have been a couple of times when I got close to getting a project going that is interactive and exploratory, not narrative. And I think that's the difference. There are lots of people trying to make interactive media, and they're determined to make them stories of some kind. It's not storytelling media. It's an exploratory medium. And I had a couple of ideas I'd love to try to work out, but it's very complicated. The technology is cumbersome and expensive, and there are just not many places around able to help. But you know, I'm sure it'll get cheaper and quicker and easier to use. So I'd still like to try that.
Okay. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
It was my pleasure too.